Hello, everybody, and welcome to our discussion on technical proposals. We're going to be focusing our discussion today on using persuasion in writing as we address the problem and solution that you're going to present in your technical proposal. So what is the purpose of a proposal? It's typically to identify an issue, a problem, a need, or a lack of efficiency. Then on the other hand, we're also going to present a solution. And that might be done by pitching a new idea or type of technology or a change to certain software or hardware, suggesting some type of organizational change or just a new approach to a workflow or the way that something is done. Of course, these are just examples, so there's lots of other different types of things you could substitute for what I've gone over here. As far as organizing your work, this document is pretty straightforward in the setup. I think of it as a front-end setup and a back-end setup. So the front end is where you're going to introduce the problem, and there's a couple of important components. First, you have your introduction, and your focus there should be establishing credibility, identifying the problem in very clear, simple language, and providing any necessary background that your specific reader might need to understand the problem solution that you're presenting. And that is something important I just want to highlight. Your proposal should have a specific reader, a real first and last name, just as with the memo you wrote to Eliza Witten. She was, obviously a fictional person, but a person with a title and with qualifications and expectations of you. The same is true for the proposal, except this time you're going to be identifying maybe the president of a company that you work for, or your manager at your job, or if you're writing about something that's a problem in a community, you could be writing to the city council or to the mayor, something like that. Keep it local, of course. We don't want any types of topics that are so broad that you're going to write to like the World Health Organization, right? It wouldn't be possible to write effectively for that kind of a document in the short time that we have. So keep your topics small. Very similar to the screencast where you only had limited space and time to complete it. The same is true here. Okay, so back to the front end setup. You can talk about what your connection to the problem is and how much you know about the problem. And that could be either from understanding how it has a negative impact because it impacts you, or just because of something that you've observed. So talking about your connection to the problem is going to help establish your credibility. Then you'll clearly state the problem in one sentence in the first paragraph, again using the direct approach. And then also in the front end setup, you'll talk about the details of the problem. So who does it affect? How does it affect them? And very importantly, why does that matter to your reader? So why should your reader care if a group of people is being affected by something that they have control over? If they're not feeling any pain points, then they might not be particularly motivated to spend money or time on the solution you're going to suggest. That's why that last component there of pointing out why all of this should matter to your reader is really important. When you're doing so, you want to give concrete examples and use research and sources to support your ideas. So that's another way to help you build up credibility. So then on the back end, now we're talking about the solution to the problem that you very clearly and neatly organized for your reader. So we move into the back end by presenting the idea or solution. Make sure that you define and describe your solution in detail. Outline any costs. This could be a part of your research. Outline the benefits to the reader, just like in the front end we were explaining to them why they should care about this particular problem. Now we want to point out why going with your solution is going to benefit them and how it's going to be good for them to agree with what you're asking for. Do some legwork, meaning if you're presenting a solution, just as an example, about adding a second drive-through window to the fast food place that you work at, you might want to check out some websites and look and see how much is a project like this going to cost. Will the store need to be shut down for a day or two, or longer or shorter period of time? What about materials? Will the current drive-through be able to stay operational? All of these types of things. And the more work that you can do for the person who needs to approve this, the more likely they're going to be to approve it, because you're not asking them to do much. If you leave everything in their plate, like, hey, this is my idea, but I don't know any of the details or timelines or costs, then they're not going to be as likely to agree. And finally, predict the results. And that's actually a persuasive writing topic that we're going to talk about later, so I will leave it at that. Finally, you'll have a strong persuasive closing. And again, we're going to talk about persuasive elements in writing right now. So there are 10 key writing techniques that can help you be persuasive. This is the list of all 10. We're going to kind of run through them one at a time, so I won't read the whole list here. But there are a couple of special considerations before we jump into those 10 tips. The first one is resistance from your reader. So this might not apply to everyone. You might be writing to a reader that you think is going to be really receptive to what you're suggesting. And if that's the case, good, you have it easy. However, if you think there's going to be resistance from your reader, that they're maybe not going to care about the problem or spend the money or time on the solution, you want to really think through that. Try to figure out why they would hesitate to consider your idea and address that directly within your writing. Like, wipe that hesitation away by addressing whatever that issue might be directly. And then think about what rhetorical appeal is best suited. So that could be logos, meaning you're going to present statistics if this person really wants facts and numbers. If it could be an emotional appeal to get someone excited about change. So there's lots of different ways to approach a resistant reader. And then make sure that you are turning to the experts. And this is how you can find your research requirements here for this proposal. Think about similar businesses with similar problems, and you can dig into how they address the issue, and that can be a source of research. Same thing if there are big name companies that have dealt with maybe a similar problem. There's typically the bigger name companies publish a lot, or they get written about a lot on sites like the Washington Post. So you can definitely try to find some of your research by looking at similar problems at different locations. Number 1 is be authoritative and establish credibility. That is the best way to get readers on your side and agreeing with you. There's 2 ways that we can do this. One is through qualifications and connections, and the other is through providing good research and background information. So when it comes to qualifications and connections, you'll talk about what relevant qualifications you have as related to the problem and how your connection can build some credibility. You can be very direct about that, especially if you are someone who's directly impacted by the problem you've identified. And then for research and background, you'll think about what kinds of research specifically are going to strengthen your ideas and what kind of background information is needed to build your credibility. Tone is very important in the entire proposal, but especially when you're focused on building credibility. You don't want to be this guy because he's pointing at you, he's in your face, and he's, generally speaking, doesn't set a tone that feels welcoming and inviting and gets me to agree with him. On the other hand, we have this guy who's a little bit less in your face. He's still giving you, a thumbs up. He's kind of smiling. It's just a more conservative, assertive approach as opposed to aggressive. So aggressive is a no, assertive is a yes. Strategy 2, use effective rhetorical questions. Rhetorical question is one asked to elicit a specific response from your reader, not an answer to the actual question. So the best example I can think of is when I asked my 10-year-old, hey, do you want me to take your phone away for the rest of the day? I'm not asking because I really want him to answer that at yes or no. I'm asking that because I want the response of him stopping whatever it is he's doing that made me say that. So a rhetorical question, again, it's technically a question, but there's not an answer that's actually expected. So here are some examples. Would you like the company to make more money? Would you like employees to be happier at work? So forth and so on. So some type of question that is relevant to your topic and will get the reader kind of nodding their head in agreement. Yeah, I would like for people to be happier at work. So you can do this in a sunshine and rainbow type of way, or you can do it in a doom and gloom type of way. So the opposite is these bottom 2 questions. How would you feel if the company had to let 10 people go? Like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to do that. And then you'll continue on with your sentence. If we don't implement this change quickly, we might find ourselves in that situation. So you can use these questions in a variety of ways. Number 3 is use repetition. And I don't mean that literally. Don't actually repeat the same words, but you want to repeat key ideas and emphasize connections while thinking about a theme. And you can do that through word choice, something that's really interesting. We'll see that in the example here. I'll read it quickly. It says, I deserve an A on this assignment because of the hard work I've done. Over the past 2 weeks, I have spent countless hours researching and brainstorming. Even though I was initially confused, I reviewed the instructions and asked questions until I was on the right track. I believe my efforts have earned me an A. So you'll see it's very clear the argument that this person is making, that they deserve an A. And the underlined words are things that contribute to the theme. So they're all connected. If you look at the first underlined word, it's deserve, and then the very last underlined word is earned. So it's kind of bookending this paragraph with those two key ideas. Hey, I deserve this, and then it transitions into I earned this, because in the middle we have all the content talking about what that person did to earn it. So we've got, let me tell you what I deserved, this is why, and now reinforcing the idea. So if you find that you have time, I know the assignment in and of itself is a lot of work, but trying to refine your paragraphs on this level can really elevate your writing. Be consistent with your tone and your organization, the way that you're organizing ideas, and the theme, meaning the tone of the words that you're choosing. Number 5, make sure you're often offering reasons for all of the arguments that you make. So don't stop at telling your reader what they should do. You have to follow up and tell them why. Basically, explain your ideas. Number 6 is that you can use comparisons to help your reader better understand what you're trying to express. Comparisons are things like metaphors, similes, and analogies. An example of a written comparison could be happy employees are like kids on Halloween, motivated to work hard for their rewards. So we've got some imagery there, and it's pretty easy to understand the comparison. On the right, there's a visual comparison showing someone walking on a tightrope above sharks. I like to think that this would work well in a proposal, maybe concerning like an independent coffee shop. And the independent coffee shop is the guy walking on the tightrope, and the sharks are all of your big name stores like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and the bigger places. So this person has to be very careful. It's a bit like they're balancing so that they can survive among the sharks. So you can use visuals like this that are really strong. So don't just kind of go out in left field and throw in images for no reason. You want there to be a really good connection between a visual that does not include data and what you're writing about. Number 7, agitate and solve. This is a very effective one, especially if you have a resistant reader. So we already talked about the front end and the back end. So the front end, you'll demonstrate the problem, and then the back end, you will show how your idea solves it. The agitate and solve technique is where that front end is very agitating and irritating to your reader. You're reminding them of all the problems and all the issues that have been going on. So you get them kind of like all worked up, like, yeah, I really do want to solve this problem. It is a big deal. And then you solve on the back end. So sometimes getting your reader set up for your solution is the key to getting it approved. Number 8, predict the results. So you want to give your reader some idea of what to expect. And these are some phrases that you can use to help you get that content in. If you follow my recommendations, the company is sure to, see an increase in their net profit year over year. I envision ABC. So just one of these types of phrases toward the end is something that can help with your persuasive closing. And this really goes back into the resistant readers, but for everybody, you want to go through the exercise just to make sure you're not overlooking anything. So you want to predict your readers' questions and objections ahead of time. So it works really well to read your proposal after you're done and pretend that you're the reader and that from the first word you hate it, that you just want to be hypercritical of every single idea within the proposal. And if you come up with some valid objections, some valid criticisms, you want to work those out within your paper. Anticipate that the reader is going to have that same resistance. In other words, we're providing answers and solutions before the reader can object. So these are some phrases you can have in your head when you do that read through. But what if this happens? Or I'm not sure about spending 6 months on this particular project. That's a big time commitment. How will you make this part of the project work, right? Think of those types of questions and answer them. And then finally, number 10, this one is actually kind of a throwback to our first unit. Don't forget to use rhetorical appeals. So we have logos, pathos, and ethos, and you do want to think about the intersection between your reader, your topic, and consumers or society or whoever this problem that you've identified is impacting. So that is it for the 10 persuasive writing techniques. There's a quick little overview of them here.